Okay, welcome back everyone. So today I'm just going to share with you and go through the very first assignment task for research practices. Um, so this is linking into some of the other videos that have already been created on here. So our very first assessment task is the creation and use of a research instrument. Now, those people that have watched some of the previous stuff, or I kind of flippantly call research instrument, and I think I said a method a few times, but what we're doing is we're actually creating two different kinds. So we want you to create and actually use two different research instruments for your particular, so your research project question. And they need to be designed, and then you'll need to collect the data. And the data you collect is what we refer to as primary data, meaning that you have collected it yourself. You have not obtained it from anyone else. So the instruments and or methods that you'll be using or approaches is you'll find these are very interchangeable, unfortunately. Instruments may include surveys, interviews, observations, experiments, action research, and there's actually a lot that you can do in terms of identifying the ones that are going to be easiest for you to approach would be looking at surveys, interviews, observational research collection, or creating experiments, which is the experiments one is specifically looking at testing a hypothesis, but you're using usually numbers rather than and you're using replacing people with numbers. Action research is still possible. So action research is where you have a hypothesis about a particular topic. So for example, I'm going to say that it could be that I'm going to see how many people from this class interact with my YouTube videos, and see from that if I get a higher success rate of assessments being completed correctly versus not having a YouTube video, not having YouTube videos at all, and what that does. So you're looking at action research is literally I have a theory, I action that, and then I reflect and I gain the data, and then I look at it and I go okay, and then I make further changes, or I go no, that worked really well, but where else could I improve? So this is your first, written formative, the first summative assessment. So this is actually included in your grading, and it is we do have to create a folio, but don't stress too much about that. So this is just saying this is the first half of your folio. So this particular assessment piece is actually worth 35% of your overall grade. So it is one that we do strongly ask you to take seriously in terms of grade weighting. I will be going through the the performance standards in a separate in a class activity, so I won't go through this in too much detail. But needless to say, as you can see, you're only being marked on two things. So we're asking if you've chosen a relevant research approach for the purpose that you need it. And then we're looking at how well you have developed your specific research skill. So it might be that, and this is where looking at question design becomes really important. And that's going to be, if you're struggling with your questions, I've got a whole separate video on that. Okay, so part one is you need to choose. So part one is literally you need to select two different methods, so two different instruments and ways that you are going to gain information. So it might be that you pick a survey and an interview. It might be that you pick, it might be that you decide to select an interview and then do some action research. It might be that you do an experimental research followed by a survey question, some survey questions. Okay, it doesn't matter which two you choose, it just matters that you complete two. Part two, you need to probably look around at some instruments that already exist. Do some individual research of your own, go, okay, so this is how this would be used in my particular area. So for some of you, it might be, okay, I'm really interested in creating an interview. So something that you could do is actually look at some famous interviews that have been completed over the years by people like Oprah Winfrey, or maybe you want to go for a less serious interview, so might look at how um, Oprah would do an interview versus a journalist would do an interview. We might want to look at how interviews are done on the radio. So there's all different ways of giving the information, of gaining information. So they're all technically interviews, but they're all done very, very differently. And I have at the bottom of this page given some some links as well that you're more than welcome to look through. Part three, so is when you start actually designing. So now you have your two different methods, either your two different approaches that you're going to use. You've looked at examples and you're like, yep, these are definitely the two I want to do. Now you're going to design them. And what I mean by design is you are going to actually write your questions down. You're going to, it might be that you're going to log on and create an account on SurveyMonkey, and you're going to add all your bits and pieces in there, and then you're going to send out the link. Okay. There is, as I said, please look at the PowerPoint that explains how to write effective questions. And I would really like to please get these checked by a teacher, so either myself or Mr. Brooke, before you submit them and send them out. The reason being is the questions you ask are actually really, really important in terms of the information you get in return. And it is important that when you're writing these questions that you actually write them for a purpose. And I'll get into that in that other video. So part four, so part three, so by now for the design, you should have created a minimum of two different instruments, and they each have their questions written. All different styles of instruments require different versions of questions around the same topic. I would not expect you to submit me the same questions that you wrote for a survey or a questionnaire versus what you've completed for an interview. They must be different. Part four is when you actually go collect the data. So this is you going, okay, I've finished my SurveyMonkey and now I'm going to send out a link, and people can have time to respond to my questions. Or that you might need to hand out some the printed surveys you've done, or the mini questionnaire, or perform your interview, whatever it is. Sorry. Once you have collected your data, what I require, or what we require in terms of the completion of this assignment, is ideally I would like these, including the responses, compiled together in like a particular document, or maybe you're going to send me just a report. Either way, I need to kind of have a look at not only the questions you've asked, but I need to see how people have responded to them. Okay. When you submit this to us, please make sure your name and your SAFE number is appearing on everything. This is something you must be doing in senior school, and makes it very difficult for teachers if we do not know who you are, and we've just got work with no name on it, and then there's a lot of issues that can arise from that. Okay, so please put your name and your SAFE number on it, and please submit this via day map. Okay, so that is, and then, sorry, here's the suggested link. So you can see here I've put it under, so interviews, surveys, observational experiments, and action research. So these are all some helpful links. If you need a checklist, I've got it. So it's just quite literally the two different instruments, You've collected the data from both, so you've handed them both out and you've got all the responses back. You're going to compile it potentially into one document or however you're able to. Your name and your SACE ID are on it. Tick, amazing. Then you submit it. Okay, so that is our very first assignment, and you will have um, about, it'll be just shy of 2 weeks to complete this in. Because we do need all of the data you collect from this, we will be able to use as part of your research project. Okay, so thank you for joining. If you have any questions about any of it, please email me or come speak to me in class. Thank you so much for joining. Bye.